Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Back to Basics. Today, I'm joined by Mark Mezadourian, an intuitive who helps people work with guidance, intuition, and inner clarity in a way that's grounded, practical, and actionable. With a professional background in the performing arts, Mark brings a disciplined, experiential approach to spiritual work, translating abstract concepts like intuition and guidance into technique people can actually use in daily life. For more than 2 decades, his work has focused on helping individuals lead from a more authentic, aligned place without bypassing the realities of the human experience. Hello, Mark, and welcome to Back to Basics.
Thank you so much, Leticia. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah,
I am too. And, every time I have a guest that has been suggested by somebody I deeply appreciate, like in this case, my dear friend Nina, I give her a shout out because nothing fills my heart more when people reach out and say, you should interview this person or you should interview that person. And then, usually are the best interviews because it's people that really resonate with our message. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I appreciate the invitation. I'm happy to be here and happy to talk with you and everyone who will listen. Yeah. Awesome.
So I love to start always at the origin story. So tell me a little bit about where you're from, if you don't mind. And I'm mostly curious about what were you curious as young Mark, and what were you passionate about, and really how were those first steps into adulthood and what you decided in terms of career choice?
Sure. I'm from California, and it's very creative person, always a creative child wanting to play with puppets and this and that and make up worlds and such. Also come from, the both sides of my family. One, my mother's side went through the Armenian Genocide. So there's this whole trauma heaviness part. And my father's family is very religious. And so this is kind of like the strict, let's not have fun part. And so within that, it was recognizing from an early age where the lane of creativity was one that was mine. And my grandmother, my mother's very spiritual. My grandmother on my mother's side, saw angels and this and that and would read, coffee grounds and things like that. She wasn't overtly spiritual, but that was around. And my family's naturally intuitive, So that was always around. And as I got older, I became more and more interested in how spirituality worked. And when I was 30, I had an anxiety attack. And that was super informative in terms of what I was doing wasn't working. And out of that, I got very spiritual and really invested in working with angels. And being a skeptical person, I wasn't so keen on, well, here's what these people say about angels. Here's how it works. I want to have my own experience. Like, okay, so what is it like to connect with an angel? What do they talk about? What interests them? How does this work? And one factor in this, in the anxiety attack, basically there was a negative energy in the space that I was living. I'd gone out of town for a couple months, and the person taking care of this space went on a drug binge in my apartment. So there's this very negative energy there when I came back. So I threw her out, but this thing was there and I didn't know how to get rid of it. So I got some advice, and part of the advice was to call in Archangel Michael. And so this dramatic thing happens where I pick this day to reclaim my apartment, and I'm playing Gregorian chant music, and I have citrus and sea salt, things I wouldn't do now. But I'm in my bedroom, and there's a long hallway, then there's a living room, and I'm shouting, like, get the bleep out of my apartment. And I see out of the corner of my eye, there's like this black bear thing in that front room. And I instinctively throw this glass bowl down the hallway. It lands perfectly in the center of the room. The toilet flushes and the thing was gone.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, exactly. So like, well, what happened? Like, what actually happened? What made that change happen? And I can see now it was intention, it was calling in help, but it was the free will claiming and trusting that my intention was a higher energy than the low energy. And just seeing that's a very instructive experience of like, okay, there's an order to this. And how can I bring more order into my life? And then as I begin doing spiritual work in service, helping other people in groups and one-on-one and this and that and different things like Zoom and Insight Timer and stuff, but how to help people have those experiences and to feel empowered, to go from a place of it being a mystery to being very concrete, of like, here's how it works, and that everyone's going to have their own experience with it. But that was very instructive, and that's been the pattern that existed since then, which is like, what do they say? What do they do with this? How can we develop techniques, which has happened over years, to really help people? And one of my major goals, which feels like it's in a good space, which is how can we have in a group the same intimacy, the same specifics as a one-on-one session? And so this I do, right now on Insight Timer, which is the meditation app, which is a great space, a global space to really help a lot of people.
Yeah, I use it often. I have to say, I like that app. So wow, that's all very fascinating. So I want to backtrack. So you were raised around this. Was your family only spiritual or spiritual and religious? I'm always curious about this because a lot of religious, like I'm Catholic, and one of the things that I've heard, and even more so recently, is, in my faith, they say, yes, the angels are there to help you and you have to ask for help. They cannot just help you. So there's few concepts, even for religious people from faith that are maybe more strict or more structured, that think that this is out of the realm. But in reality, actually, even in some of those faiths, they say, we say the guardian angel prayer, from the moment we are basically very little. But somewhere along the road, it's almost like the two worlds completely disconnect. Like people that are very religious and don't believe in other parts of spirituality. And what's your take on all that?
That the ultimate take is that we focus on love. And that perhaps we release the rules that don't serve us. I think something we never talk about is the evolution of spirituality. And where are we now with that? And I think we're witnessing a space where we're so used to outsourcing power. Like, that guy's powerful. Power's over there. The power's not here. And that's reflected in pop songs in terms of, oh, love, I wish I had love over there. You have the love, but what's it like to have power right here? And for us to use our power for good. So whatever, Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher, had a great insight, which is when he met with other spiritual leaders, they had fun, they would laugh, all that stuff, religious leaders too. And then it was the followers that were the problem, and so it's getting into a space where, how can we empower everyone? What does that look like? And not get attached to this faith, that faith, but just have a commonality of oneness, that we all want peace and love, all of us. Our methods might be different. And right now, especially in America, the obsession with difference is really not serving anyone. It's created this meanness, this insecurity. It's also created obedience. So what is it like to be empowered, to have our own thoughts, and whatever belief system we align with, to let that elevate us into a space of love? or we honor each other.
I love that perspective. And actually, that's kind of intuitively where I was going. It's almost like in different faiths, it's recognized that there's the figure of guardians or angels or guidance or intuitive voice or some untapped potential that we all carry with us. And I've spoken about this with several people, but it's always, I do believe a lot in the inner game. And we always focus on the outer game, like how many degrees we have, where do we live? But the inner game, our inner game, who we are in the spiritual realm, we often completely disregard. And so I've always been very curious about that spiritual evolution that you're mentioning. So for somebody that, so you come from an intuitive family. How did you realize you had it too? And is this something that everybody has and we can develop? Or a lot of people, including me, have no clue. It's like, do we all have it somehow? And some people develop it and others don't? Or what goes on there with people that, like you, that have this level of intuition?
We are all hardwired for intuition. And we all have spiritual experiences. We just may not see it as such, which is a dream, but that might be predictive for us, or having a loved one who's passed visit us in a dream, or visit us when we're waking up or going to bed. All those different things, or knowing what to do, knowing where to go, getting guidance, or hearing the same song 7 times in one day, getting a message from that, whatever that is. But we're all hardwired for it. And coming back to empowerment, that, where do we learn this? Where do we learn how to use that in those spaces? This is one of my goals in the spaces that I hold, is to share knowledge and share techniques. It's going to be different for everyone. But in my own curiosity comes from knowing that things could be better, and recognizing, in looking back, just seeing the role of trauma in everything, and how I was raised and such, and traumas from the family, traumas, my own traumas, this and that, and how informative those are, and how the traumas create constriction, and that our healing creates expansion, and spirituality creates expansion. So how do we do that? And how do we get everyone to do that? And that's the goal. I'm not sure if I'm answering all of your questions with that. But,
No, you are. I mean, This is, I'm making, when I'm taking notes, at least for me, it means it's a great episode, because it's something that where I'm learning and I'm curious as well. And, so this is something that everybody has heard, that at least they have known. We all have the intuition. And some people say, like, yeah, we all do. But how do I start trusting it? How do I start allowing myself to be guided, or just, trusting it more? Because I think it's a matter of trusting, right?
Yeah, it is. It's also technique. So if we, the common question, it's a very, very good question, which is, how do you discern the difference between ego and spirit? And it's getting into a space of asking. I do think in this, we get into a space where we eliminate the middleman. We're used to, I got to talk to that guy, emphasis on guy, and he'll talk to, if we let that go and recognize it is, that the universe, the angels, that they are loving beings. They work with unconditional love, that there's nothing to fear. And that we get into language, which might be, thank you, angels, for being strong and present with me. Thank you, angels, for healing myself. Thank you, angels, for healing my loved ones. Thank you, angels. What do you want me to know? Just using language, or angels help. And just using our free will, as you've mentioned earlier, using our free will, and just to put that forward. If we think of the role of the ego is to keep us alive, and we're alive. But the ego is going to maintain the status quo. It's going to maintain our lives as it is, because we're alive. So even if things are not great or disadvantage, like just not working, that it's going to give us feedback that's going to sound like could, would, should, need to, have to. You better not do this. And it's going to be a bit constrictive, whereas guidance is going to be expansive, inclusive, and encouraging. And it's going to feel good. And I think we're used to, in terms of mythology, perhaps from media, that we're used to the 10-foot tall Archangel Michael going, Leticia, this is, and that's probably not going to happen. Could happen, but it's probably not. That guidance is more right here, that it's right around us and right in our hearts. And we're all hardwired for to either see with our physical eyes or more often in our mind's eye, also to hear in our inner ear or our external ears. That could be getting guidance from songs, which happens for a lot of people. You might hear a song that you've heard, like Fleetwood Mac's Don't Stop. I heard that years ago. It was like, yesterday's gone. It'll be better than before. We've heard that song thousands of times probably. But just when something sticks out to you, also you might know as like a download in your heart what the guidance is, or feel it, sense it. And I think with likely everyone who's going to listen to your podcast is a sensitive person. And it's honoring our sensitivity. Let's talk about that in a moment. But just getting into a space where we could put forward, thank you, angels, for telling me what you want me to know. Thank you, angels, for communicating to me. And to be open to feedback. And that might be like a flash or a whisper or a nudge. It might happen later. Or you might witness something you were hoping to happening, or a solution happening. But we trust the relationship that is there. And we place our attention on them and trust that our intention, thank you, angels, for helping me, is heard.
That's so interesting. Everything resonates, I have to say, because I consider, well, this podcast, you mentioned it, but it exists because of intuition. It's like I don't make money out of it. I don't know. I got a lot of people confused in my life 6 years ago when I started doing this. They all thought I'm changing my job or I'm going through a crisis, and all I was longing for was more connection, was more human connection. And all I was longing for was, if I had a inspiring conversation such as this one, where I'm learning something, or I've just been open to learning something that maybe I never discussed before. I wanted others to hear it too. I wanted to I wish my friend or this other person or whomever needed to hear this found it. And really the podcast was, and I got a lot of that, what you're calling the ego saying no, and then it was just a knowing, just do it, just start
Just do it.
But sometimes it is true that when you follow that, and I don't regret it, I really think it was guidance, but sometimes you doubt, right? Because you've been doing something and you say, okay, maybe I'm crazy, because even sometimes people that love you and support you the way they can support you, may be wondering what the heck you're doing, because they don't understand where this guidance or this intuition come from. I wonder, what can you share on that thought?
That the myths around spirituality, the main one is that it's grandiose, that it's a space of I could talk to angels and you can't, it's the opposite of that. But that's the specter that's around spirituality. And also we're used to people misusing it. We're used to people, this is the old model, which is like from the 70s, of the guru model, which is look at me, you're lucky to be in my presence. And the evolution of spirituality now, we're in a let's work. Let's all do this together. Let's share information. Let's use our wisdom. But so what other people perhaps are afraid of is that it is an ungrounded space, where in fact the opposite is true. And it's also recognizing the patterns in our lives that aren't serving us, which might be trauma-based, or being dismissed, often with the roles in our family, that we get pigeonholed. So is this seeing a space where perhaps in our spiritual journey, maybe it's private for a while, or it's just spoken to a lot of people, and that we don't try to change other people.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't, which is our instinct, which is like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Come with me, or let's do this together. Maybe it's private. Maybe it's just a few people,
Yeah, I think that's a powerful thought. And you touched upon it a little bit before when you said the problem are not the leaders, are the followers of faith base, where you have followers wanting to judge, decide, tell you how. And I think that's such a dangerous thing. It's the worst thing that we can do for ourselves and for others, because it can be such a turn off for somebody that maybe is inclined to grow in spirituality and maybe get closer to any particular faith, whichever it is. But once you feel judged and not welcome and not accepted then immediately it's like, this is why I don't do this thing. It's a shame, because it's a lost opportunity to just let people evolve at their own pace.
Yes. And the thing that's missing in all of this is community, which sounds like one of the reasons why you have your podcast is for community. And this is what, just to come back to Insight Tower, this is what I love about that space is it's community. And it's just finding places where, one of my goals in the health spaces I create on that venue and different ones in person events also, is that you're not judged, that you're welcome. And that we're not going to tell each other what to do, that we're just going to hold space together and have an experience together, and we're all going to have a different experience, especially in any spiritual space or especially an intuitive space. It's going to be different for everyone. But the goal is that everyone feels something and that we all relax. And what I find interesting is our bodies being hardwired for intuition, for spirituality, that let's say in an in-person group, if we're working, everyone is serene and everyone has the same look on their face, which is one of presence. And just seeing the value of that, of like how, I think the whole thing is how quickly can we go from being triggered to being regulated, from being dysregulated to regulated, from being triggered to not triggered. And this is one of the things that spirituality can offer us, especially in a time where anxiety and overwhelm are so prevalent. There's so many things to talk about with this. I do think it's worth mentioning in spirituality is, why is it that overwhelmingly it's women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and let's create a space where there's more men, but also that we welcome younger folks in this, but recognizing what happens to create that dynamic of people getting interested in spirituality when we've been here for a while.
Great point. And do you have a theory, or you're mentioning that there's more women than men? Is it sensitivity? Is it what's your take on that?
Sensitivity, but also knowing that there's more available. I think overwhelmingly we feel and sense that there's more available, and also just having experiences, especially perhaps as we mature, when people start to pass and we have contact with them, but just things happen. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. It's I never explored that angle, but it's interesting. And I wonder if it has anything to do, we always talk about motherhood, right? Parenthood, both sides is important. But being a mom, knowing what my body was able to do, when you talk about there's more, there's abundance, or that's like, for a woman, it's like a very tangible moment where you don't even know your body's capable of producing and hosting another human being for 9 months. So by default, we are exposed to this concept of there's a lot more that's beyond my control here, that I'm surrendered to. I mean, in childbirth, I mean, same thing. You are really in the hands of God, the universe, and even breastfeeding. I mean, there's so many things that experience in particular brings to the mother, to the woman's body, where we just have to trust in abundance, in we will be able to provide for this human being. We will be able to see this through, that maybe inherently we kind of may be more attuned to something like that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
I think with that, it's we live in such a mental culture, where everything is about cognition, that information. And there's a whole conversation about the phones and all that to have. But just seeing like where we're saturated with information and we're disconnected from our bodies. Michael Beckwith calls it a high-tech, low-touch, society. And just seeing the thing with spirituality is we use all of ourselves. And we integrate all of ourselves as opposed to segments of ourselves. So it sounds like, and I've heard other mothers talk about like just the magnificence of our bodies and having this experience of just more strength and knowing what to do and the universe helping out. But just seeing that being replicated where we are part of community, that we are seen and heard, and that we do matter, and our feelings matter, and our intentions matter, our hopes matter.
This is great. So, Mark, and so if somebody out there is listening to this and they say, I do want to get more spiritual, I do want to get more intuitive, but I don't even know where to start. So besides, of course, looking you up on Insight Timer, which is a great app. I love that app. It has something for somebody out there.
It does.
Yes. And where would you say to start, or what have you seen that works for people that maybe feel disconnected? Because sometimes all you need is to touch it. Once you touch it, it's almost you cannot get enough of, right? Like then you really want to jump in. But what could be that igniting factor that somebody that's searching for a deeper spiritual life can go for?
To see the goal of any spiritual endeavor is to make the world bigger. And we're hyper aware of what we don't like and what we don't want to have happen. And what if we flip that to what do we want to have happen? What is the best thing that can happen? And that we have clarity about that. And that our spiritual lives begin by making everything bigger so those things can happen, that we're making room. And be that having, working with animal guides, be that existing guides or birds or, whales or giraffes, whoever, and that, or anything in nature, be that, a rock or a crystal, just having anything that's going to remind you that there's more. And this is where we trust our affinity. We trust, they're buzzing my ears. I'm talking. So let me listen to them for a moment. That we trust that we're heard. And that we are creating a world where no one gets lost. And that all the mythology that's dumped upon us, that you're insignificant, you don't matter, that we ignore that. We see that as a myth, that's propaganda for people who want to disempower us. And that we recognize it's okay for us to talk to an angel, talk to a grandmother who's passed, to talk to a goddess, to talk to a guide, to talk to artists. Make fantastic guides, be that Maya Angelou or David Bowie or someone that you really admire, to talk to them, because we already have relationships with them, Jim Morrison, and to just whatever feels good to you, to do it, and to trust that we're building muscle with this. And we're not taught how to do that for the most part. But there is technique. And the technique is We could do it right now with just saying our own names, like I am Mark, and then saying, I'm not anybody else. And I am Mark. I am my conscious adult self. Thank you, angels, goddesses, and guides, for being strong and present with me. Thank you, angels, goddesses, and guides, for helping me in every part of my life. I welcome upgrades in every part of my life. I choose to live on a peaceful planet. And just noticing with those, like even just saying that, like the atmosphere, like everything gets bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's more possibility. We're making room. So those are starting spaces. And I think also taking it out of the woo-woo, super helpful. And just seeing this is practical. This thing is hardwired for intuition, for healing. Let's use all of ourselves, not just parts of ourselves.
Well, it's I totally like and resonate with everything you're saying, and remembering also maybe going back to basics, as I call. Like I know that there are a lot of people there. Well, I talk to Jesus all the time. That's like my go-to. But you also forget about that, right? And there a lot of people are even in a fight with the institutions, the thing, and then you forget that there's a personal one-on-one relationship we can have with any of those angels, with any of those guides, with with Jesus, with Mary, with whomever you want to connect with. As long as you establish the desire to just have that conversation, I think that's, for me at least, is an amazing starting point to recognize that you are open to receive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to
so go ahead.
Real quickly, I think if we frame everything you're saying in we're building a relationship with those guides, building a relationship with Jesus, Archangel Michael, Maya Angelou, Hilma of Clint, whoever it is, Frank Sinatra, that your grandmother, that we're building those relationships, and that everyone who is past, everyone, all the angels, all the guides, that they are not insecure and they are not human, that they do engage with us with unconditional love. And so there's a space to dismiss the mythology around this. And especially in America, we don't talk about death, but they're all fine. They're all together and they're having a party and they're celebrating us. They're helping us. But just trusting that our happiness offends no one.
I love that. Our happiness offends no one. And we don't have to be the victim. I sometimes say it's not a competition. Like sometimes you talk to people and they want to offload on you how bad their day was or how rough they have it. And I mean, we all have circumstances that are bad, but it's sometimes even if you dare to say something, like somebody who's going to come back at like, well, I have it worse. And like sometimes I feel as humans, we engage in this race to who has it worse that puts us in a mindset that prevents us from seeing the good. And so going back to your opening space, creating like this is detrimental to our well-being when we kind of come from that mindset rather than from how good we have it and like, well, we are breathing and somebody else is not as of 3 minutes ago and somebody's done. So and it's just also I think a mindset and a way that we have chosen to go through our days.
Yes. Yeah, we're taught a lot of limitation. We're also, in the example that you're giving, we are taught, and it's reinforced, to focus about what's not working, to complain, and what is it to flip that into what am I grateful for? I'm grateful for this conversation. Grateful to talk to someone who is so open-minded and has wisdom. I'm grateful for this beautiful day. I'm grateful for all that's happening today, grateful for the beautiful opportunities that are here. And then getting into what do I want to have happen? Let's have a peaceful planet where everyone thrives and no one gets lost.
I like the vision you have. I'm a dreamer too, but some people get said like, how are we going to change the world? How are we going to get people?
Yes. But
Uh-huh.
how we're going to change the world is right here.
Mm-hmm.
And that we drop out of the mythology presented to us. We drop out of, outsourcing our power, like that guy's in charge, as opposed to this power right here. I choose to live on a peaceful planet. And that we drop out of all fights.
Yeah, I hear you, and it's very powerful. And that we have accountability. Like when we talk about certain situations and we say, what can I do for this? Because we're always looking next door as what can be done, or these people didn't do this or that.
Yeah.
But we forget that as an individual, we also have the ability to act, to speak up, to defend, to become passionate about what we believe in. And to your point, I think you've said it beautifully. It's like to realize that the power is within ourselves. And if we don't use it, we are also as complacent and as, errors and omissions, as they say, by not doing, we are also failing in a way.
Yeah. There's in addition to all that, it's seeing like what is our role right now, which is in this very specific time, especially in America, no one is standing still. We're all changing. So we get to choose what those changes are like, and what world do we want to live in? And so we see all the traumas on the surface for everyone right now. And let's heal trauma. We live in a planet and a time where there's more ways to heal trauma than ever before. And acknowledgement is the first step, which is like, that happened. That's messed up. I understand why that happened, or I don't understand why that happened. I'm going to heal that. And which is us being kind to ourselves and to let our nervous systems have fresh information and new information. And maybe that's stretching, maybe that's breathing, maybe that's meditating, maybe that's doing some specific healing work, but just acknowledging that those things have happened. And also it's just being kind to ourselves, being kind to the grocery store, and recognizing that younger people now, people in their 30s, 20s, and teenagers are having completely different reality than we grew up with, which is the devices, which are great technology, but they're really not great for our bodies or our psyche. And that if we could just talk about this for a moment, because it relates to anxiety, which is with the phones, our brains are working out of balance. It's easier to see in teenagers. But what is present is everything's a short brainwave. Everything is short information. There's a lot of information constantly coming, and our brains aren't wired for that. And what has vanished almost entirely are long brainwaves, which would be reading, meditating, taking a walk in nature without the phone, watching, let's say, a film without interruption, without the short brainwave, and just allowing our brains to work in balance. Another thing that has almost entirely vanished is being bored. And being bored or doing nothing allows our brain to sort information. So if we're constantly bombarding our brain with information, it's an overload. And this is anxiety and overwhelm. And the other practical step that people can do with that is to not use your phone as an alarm clock, to not sleep next to your phone. And why would be, if the phone is on right next to your head, it's constantly connecting with cell towers. That's wireless radiation. And so your brain is registering that activity as light. So your brain is still active rather than resting. So perhaps, and I understand that some people need to have the phone for security or to hear from a loved one. Maybe the phone's a bit away and maybe on a different level than your head. And if those necessities aren't there, maybe the phone is off in another room. And I encourage people to try that once and see how it goes. The other factor with anxiety is from wireless radiation would be any digital assistant system that's blasting out a 30-foot radius of like dirty electricity. It's listening for your voice. That's constant. And those things are invisible. But it's just recognizing that These things are new. And what is it like to turn that off for a night and see how you all sleep, and to do what we can to replicate nature in our sleeping space? I think that's worth bringing up. So in doing readings for a long time, if someone tells me they have anxiety, insomnia, or cancer, my first question is, do you sleep next to your phone? And it's almost always yes. And they're really, really powerful. And just having some distance, trusting distance is our friend in that. And that when we mitigate that we can get into more coherence in our body and being.
You're definitely full of wisdom, Mark. It's been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything, I know you do, I think, retreats, and you have day or day workshops, anything you want to share with the audience that maybe we haven't touched upon that it's exciting you these days?
I mean, the mentioned insight timer, just to be specific, what I like about it is it's global. There's people, I do right now, multiple nights a week. And it's so there's meditations on there that people can listen to. There's also live events. There's people from Australia, South Africa, Canada, Europe, America. It's just great. And it's really heartening that it's global, that it's not constrictive. It's everyone. And that's just really wonderful. And also it's a community. And that's beautiful. I'm based on the West Coast. I go to Portland once a month to a store called New Renaissance Bookshop. I do events also in the Bay Area in California. I have a relationship with Unity Spiritual Center of San Jose and Unity Spiritual Center of San Francisco. Going to be doing things later this year with them, but also just, I'm on Instagram under my name.
Awesome. Well, I definitely will put all the insight timer info for the audience. And I always end every interview with a question: what makes you tick? You share a lot of things that I can guess make you tick. Making a world a better place being the one that stays with me the most. But any other thing that when you yourself need to resource and recenter your soul is your go-to practice or activity?
If I'm feeling overwhelmed, I pray. I ask for it. I thank you, Mother, Father, God. Thank you, Archangels and Ascended Masters, for being strong and present with me right now. Thank you for helping me in every single part of my life. I surrender all attention to you. Thank you for all my encounters and environments being filled with love. And thank you for your guidance for me right now. So just making the world bigger. And also, I just think there's something, and you and I spoke briefly before we started about being of service, especially doing this work. It's been so misused, but to hold space for people, is really important. And just in what it is to recognize everyone's having a similar experience right now, which is like, what the is going on? And just trusting there's a context to this, and for all of us to have hope and to recognize that we're not done, that we're witnessing the collapse of the old way of power, which is hoarding power and exclusive power, and that we are participating in empowerment for everyone. And that's orderly, not chaotic, because we all want peace and love. So it's having hope and making the world bigger through prayer and intention. Yeah.
Wow. That's definitely goes top 10 best answers ever on Back to Basics. So I thank you for that, Mark.
You're welcome.
No, and I mean it. It's just, it had really a lot of wisdom in there. So I thank you for that and for being part of the show and for keeping inspiring. And I will look you up on you see, you gain one more subscriber now. And thank you so much. And I hope to you out there that are listening that you have heard something that resonated with this beautiful conversation. And until the new episode of Back to Basics, take care.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.